Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to our Learning from Leaders series. As always, I'm with Peter Vanham, the CEO, the author of Before I Was a CEO, and today we have the immense privilege to welcome Mr. Christian Clerc, the President, Global Operations of Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts. Peter, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Luc. It's good to see you. And for those that have joined us in recent weeks, you may have noticed something different about our setup today. It's true. I am in Luc's chair and Luc is in my chair, just to change things up for those who have joined us the last couple of weeks. But it's not about us. It's about Christian Clerc today. Christian Clerc, the President Global Operations of a very famous hotel group that is the Four Seasons. And he's joining us, I think, not from Geneva, where he is from the region, though. He's from Montreux. He'll tell us all about it in just a little bit. But first, thank you so much for joining us, Christian, Mr. Clerc. How are you? Where are you in the world? And we'll just unmute you.
Can you hear me?
There we go. Absolutely.
Great. Well, I'm first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to participate today. And I am originally from Montreux, but right now I'm sitting in Washington, D.C., where I live. Our company is based in Toronto. That's where our global headquarters are. We'll talk about it in a minute. But I live in Washington, and I've been here, as many of us, kind of sheltering in place for the past few months as we navigate through these unprecedented conditions.
Yeah, unprecedented time indeed. And of course, we have seen your city, Washington, D.C., in the news just a couple of days ago, I think, for what is usually a fantastic celebration, the 4th of July. A bit strange images for many people who are familiar with this celebration. Normally, lots of people, crowded places, everyone in the capital overjoyed. What was the celebration like this year for you?
Well, look, my wife and I took a walk through the mall where the fireworks take place every year earlier that day, and the preparations were in place. But clearly, this has been a very unusual celebration, this 4th of July, and I think that people were. The people that ventured out, respected social distancing as they should. Wore masks, and so certainly it wasn't the same level of celebration and kind of gathering we'd seen in the past. And I think everybody realizes this is one in these very unique moment, once in a century, I think, moment where you got these milestones in your personal life, in your professional life, and I think we'll all remember going through these key milestones under this current environment for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, of course, once in 100 years kind of experience. Your company, Four Seasons, very famous. For me, it looks like it's been around forever. But of course, 100 years ago, it wasn't around. It's been founded, I think, in 1960. So this must be the first time that you have that order of magnitude in terms of a crisis. Now, Four Seasons, we know the name. Famous hotels, very high-end, fantastic places to go. You'll meet the global jet set. Founded for global travelers, I think, in the beginning. Where are the global travelers today?
Well, many of them are like us. They are just waiting for things to settle and really trying to figure out what does travel look like in the short term, right? I'm happy to say that about 50% of our hotels have reopened now and are operating, but clearly what we're seeing is much more regional travel. And we're not seeing the long haul international travel. As a matter of fact, as you know, things keep changing, every day. U.S. citizen, for example, at this time are not able to travel to Europe, into the Schengen zone. And so all of that complexity is, the situation is very fluid. So I think, there's still a great lack of clarity and uncertainty about the future. And so what we try to focus on is those things that we can control. And we'll talk about this, I'm sure, in a few minutes. But in times of crisis, I think you have to go back to the fundamental value proposition of your company, your core beliefs, what is at the core of your DNA of your brand, and how will you use this crisis to enhance the fundamental value equation that you offer to your guests and your clients.
And so of course there's what your DNAs, what your values are. Then there's what you offer. Now, of course, for a hotel organization, for any travel or tourism related organization, of course, this is by definition a crisis because there's no way around it.
Yeah.
What are those values then, and how can they alleviate to a certain degree that crisis that everyone's facing?
Well, I think Four Seasons is a brand based on trust, first and foremost. And trust is what we value the most from our partners, our guests, our clients. And so, it's really about the definition of trust, right? I think in this current environment, trust is a very fundamental trust in the brand. It's about, health and safety and hygiene. These, really fundamental needs, which I think in the past were kind of taken for granted.
Right.
Today, I think people's foremost concern when they travel is it going to be safe? And I think we have a unique card to play on that front, because for the past 60 years, as you suggested, we've built this brand on quality, on excellence, and this has given us, this. I think our brand stands for quality and excellence, and so our guests trust that in everything we do, in the big things and the small things, right? We're going to apply the same level of care, professionalism, and quality. And since this is why we partnered with some of the top medical experts in the world to create what we call Lead with Care, which is all about elevating, hygiene procedures in our hotels to make sure that people are fundamentally safe when they travel. And by the way, our guests, but also our employees.
And so, of course, that means that, whereas a very short-term perspective may be, we open as soon as possible. We try to get people back as soon as possible. Of course, those values that are about trust, that are about care, they will tell you, no, look at the long run. Look at that bond that you've built up with clients, and trust that things will get better over time. And that the best way to do so is to look after your customers the best way you can.
Yeah, I think, you have to be transparent, right? And we have a responsibility to our employees and our guests to create environments that are as safe as possible. So, for us, it's not about just reopening these hotels and just going back to business as usual. We've created very rigorous health and hygiene and safety procedures from the moment you arrive at the hotel. But frankly, we communicate with our guests when they book, and we want them to be safe on their journey as well. So we provide really guidance around, making sure that you get to our hotel in as safe as possible way. And then certainly when you arrive at our hotel, we want you to have a great stay. The quality and excellence of the service, the attention to detail has to be in keeping with what you'd expect from Four Seasons. But first and foremost, we want you to know that you're safe. And so everything we do is geared towards it. So from the moment you arrive at the hotel, we're going to take your temperature, and we're going to make sure that it is safe for you to enter and for other guests. And in everything you see, and frankly, you don't see, even the heart of the house, in the back of the house, we've elevated all of our procedures, right, to make sure everyone can operate. So it's not about just reopening and welcoming people back, but it's about how we do it. And look, we're on this journey. This is not going to be smooth. We're going to have, we're seeing it around the world. Different parts of the world are reopening at different pace. we take 2 steps forwards and then we take a step back, you know,
Yeah.
and so we have to adjust, and we have to provide a consistent approach in all of our hotels, regardless of the environment, to make sure our guests are safe.
Christian, very briefly before we move on to of course the topic we're all here for, which is your career and all the steps that you've had to take. Global brand, Four Seasons, present in all the continents, I suppose, except Antarctica. Quite a few hotels also in China, in Asian markets, that actually have come back rather well in terms of economic activity, in terms of beating the virus. What are the situations? Where are the situation best? Like if you look at your places in Guangzhou or in Beijing or in Shanghai, is it? Are you back there, or are people traveling again?
Yes, China has reopened for business, and we're seeing a lot of obviously regional and local travel. As you know, anybody going into China now still has to go through a quarantine, and so we're seeing very limited international travel into China, as most part of the world. So, but for sure, China started dealing with this since January, and actually for us it was. You know, because we're a global company, because we have 9 hotels in China, it was really insightful for us to see what was happening there and to start preparing early on, exactly, to learn from this. But I wouldn't say things are back to normal in China. They are further ahead in that journey, and they've certainly done a great job managing this. They've been very decisive, but there have been a couple of step backs. Beijing recently, 2 weeks ago, as you probably know, in the market.
Again. Also, countries like Australia, Melbourne, back in quarantine, even though they'd beaten the virus. Are there any surprising places for you? Any places that we haven't heard of, maybe in the news as much, that have that seem to have gone quite well in beating the virus?
Look, you know, I think in general, everybody's there are good news everywhere. There's good news everywhere. Even the US. I mean, it's not all equal. Market by market, you know, the situation on the ground is different depending on how thorough and diligent the local government has been about enforcing the different measures. You know, there's a great, if you want to see it, Johns Hopkins University has a great
tracker,
website.
Of course, yep.
And they have a resource center that shows you kind of the situation globally, regionally. You can nail down. They've done an amazing job just tracking, you know, kind of what's happening in different parts of the world. I find it fascinating to watch. But for us, again, regardless of what happens on the ground, our responsibility is to make sure that we don't take a false sense of security from the fact that you might have less cases in certain parts of the world than other, but that we are really thorough and diligent. And we'll keep our guards up, and we will be, you know, very thorough and conservative, as long as it takes, as long as we believe that this is truly behind us. So it could be, you know, a while before.
Could be a while. We're in for the long run.
Yeah.
To close that off, you know, you say conservative. What does that translate to in terms of years? When do you plan? What's your scenario to go back to rates and occupancy as before?
Look, nobody has a crystal ball, but I don't think we'll see normalized occupancies and performance such as we saw in 2019 until at least 2022, we believe. So, yeah. You know, best case scenario, you know, 12 months, we start ramping up.
Vaccine treatment.
Yeah, exactly. There's, you know, vaccine treatment, tracing, testing. But these things will take a while. Look, I am very optimistic in the sense that I believe that we will figure this out as a
the global
world, as a global community. We'll figure this out. And it's amazing to see all these scientists working together, hand in hand, sharing information about how to beat this thing. It's really inspiring, actually. You know, if you look for the silver lining, this has been the ultimate equalizer globally, right? Regardless where you are, you know, and you sit, we're all dealing with the same. It's rare that we all deal with the same situation. And so I think it kind of brings us together, and there's a lot of positive, hopefully, that will come out of this.
I want to go indeed to those positive moments and perhaps take you in a journey back to time, because you were telling in the preparation that actually right now, this very moment, you were supposed to be in a very happy place, which is actually the place you're from, Montreux, Switzerland. But that of course you couldn't travel because here too the plans have changed. But you come from Montreux, isn't that right? You come from Switzerland, and you lived when you were a little kid up in the mountains around Lake Geneva.
Exactly. I mean, I'm born and raised in Montreux, beautiful part of the world, which I'm sure most of the people watching us know. And this is really how I was introduced to hospitality. And to this day, I go back every year. My parents still live there. My best friends are in Montreux, and I stay in touch with them. And I love going back. Normally, we have this ritual. We go back as a family every year. And we always do it around the Montreux Jazz Festival. I'm on the board of the Jazz Festival, and it's been just a great, it's always a great experience.
Right.
But this year, we have the silent shores. There's no concert, there's no music. I'm still hoping to be able to visit in August, still working through the details. But yeah, it's a part of the world I love, and I'm very proud to be Swiss.
No, absolutely. And of course, being Swiss, you're really a mountain man, aren't you? You lived a couple of 100 meters above, I think, Montreux, you told me. And actually, it was your getaway to go to the city. And that's where you picked up your love for hospitality, because actually it was a way for you to spend time in the city with the excuse, I'll stay at the restaurant of a friend of mine, and maybe I'll help out here and there in order to earn my place to stay over with my friend.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I grew up in Chambly, which is, for those of you who know, is on the way up the mountains, about 700 meters above the lake, beautiful views. And as a kid, when you live, up, in the mountain like that, you feel isolated because you have no way to moving around. So one of my best friends had a restaurant in Montreux called La Rouvenat, an Italian restaurant. And so I would go down, our parents would get together, and then I'd find an excuse. I wanted to sleep over at his house so we could go out. I didn't have to go back up the mountain. Anyway, so by doing so, his family rule was that he couldn't leave the restaurant until the service was finished for the evening. And so instead of just waiting there, I would help. And so by the age of 12, I could do every job in the restaurant, front, back, bar, pizzeria, cold kitchen, hot kitchen, stewarding, dishwasher, everything. And I loved it. I really loved the energy. And when I was working the room as a server, I would get tipped. And I said, hey, this is not bad. And this was really how I fell in love with the restaurant business at first.
And then of course, the question is it going to be a passing passion, or is it going to be that stays with you? And you have, of course, hit that point when you were probably in your early 20s, and you have to decide, am I actually going to continue to work in restaurants, hotels, etc., or am I going to go a different direction? You went to study for a restaurant. Your father said, okay, that's fine. If you really mean it, then go for the best school, learn how to be a pro in hospitality. And that's where you still are today. But your first experience with the continent where you are right now followed after college, when you, I suppose, met who's now your wife, girlfriend then, and she went back to the US, and you decided maybe it's time to follow her.
That's right. So yeah, I around the age of 17, I was finishing high school. I went thinking about going to the army, and I was thinking about becoming a restaurateur. I love the restaurant business. And my father said, look, there's very little money. The margins are very small in restaurants. He was right. If you're going to do that, go to a business school or go to a hotel school. So I went to Lausanne, École Hôtelière de Lausanne, and did that. And while I was in school, I met my wife today. This was
early 90s.
Yeah, it was almost 30 years ago. And we've been married 26 years in July, actually, this month. But yeah, when I graduated from Lausanne, I had a number of opportunities to go work for some of the big group. Hilton at the time, Trust House Forte was a hotel group that was offering kind of these, management programs around the world.
Yeah, traineeship, as they call it. Yep.
That's right. And I turned that down to come to the US with no papers, no job. I wouldn't recommend this to anyone who's listening to us right now, but it was really, I followed my heart, and, it worked out at the end. But I arrived in 92 in the US, very exciting time. It was an election year, as you remember. Bill Clinton won in November, took over in January of 93. And it was just kind of a new chapter in the US. It was a great time to arrive here and to be exposed to this
country. A lot of
country.
growth also. And so it actually worked out for you. It was a gamble, but you got a job in it, and it was sort of a happy ending, at least for a couple of years.
That's right. And we got married in 94. And then, returned back to Europe. We both decided to come back to Europe. And as young and very passionate, two passionate people, we followed our heart again. Meg was pregnant. We had a honeymoon baby, believe it or not. And we went back to Europe again with no real assignment. I had no job. I was just going back. We knew we wanted to be in Europe, and we ended up working in Italy and Paris and Rome in the hotel business. So at that time, I was more interested in learning than I was in titles, right? What was really important to me is, what was I going to get out of this role, and less what title was it going to have. I wasn't concerned about that, because remember, I was still thinking about being an entrepreneur. I never thought I would be in a company for this long and go up the ranks and be president. So I was more interested in learning and really having experiences, sometimes outside of my comfort zone,
right,
which would really teach me something. And that's how I acquired, I think, the general skill set that I required in order to move forward, and it still served me today well.
I mean, of course, you were able to gather those experiences. You say, you were in Washington, D.C., you were in Rome, you see a bit of the world, and then the time comes that you say, you know what, maybe I should try and go to a new place, a big brand, a new adventure, and that then was Euro Disney. I mean, we all know it now, and many of us grew up with it as it being a fact on the ground, but it actually started when you joined in 1997 or something like that, 96.
Yeah, it was actually 95, and Disney was it was open, but it was just starting. It was still in the red, and Philippe Bourguignon had just arrived. He's the leader who's credited with bringing the company into the black.
From the red, that is, because of course it starts. People are very excited. Disney, big success in Florida, but in Europe, it wasn't that much of a known factor, at least not as a destination place, as a resort. And then they chose a place at the Marne River, 90 kilometers from Paris or so, 60 kilometers from Paris. Not really something that worked straight away. So it was really a learning experience.
Yeah, big in Marne-la-Vallée is not exactly... the weather is not fantastic in winter, so it was it was a challenge, but phenomenal job, phenomenal experience, great company, learned so much. Not a hospitality, not a hotel company, an entertainment company, but everything they do is with a level of professionalism that's remarkable. And it was there was a great experience for me to work at in Paris, at what's called Disneyland Paris. Yeah.
Because of you say you learn early on in your career, you gather experiences, you see what you like, you also see what you don't like. That's an important part of that learning process. And one of those things that you didn't realize is, what, I'm really at heart a hotel man. Like, I really enjoy hotels that take their pride in being the absolute best in hospitality, and then not for whom it is sort of a side business. And that's, of course, a lesson that you then learn at a company like Disney.
Yeah, two important things. I think you get, the more you kind of go beyond your comfort zone, the more you get to realize that the things you enjoy are very valuable and reinforce, your belief. But also, it's important to know things that you don't like to do. They don't make you happy. You're not stimulated, or maybe you're just not good at them. And you don't know until you try them. Same thing with leadership, by the way. The more you move around, the more you experience leadership, good and bad, and you can learn from both. I've learned from the worst, bosses, things that I would never want to do and replicate to my own team, to my own
Right.
people. I've learned to analyze, why does this person make me feel that way? You know, what is it
And then,
that
of
they
course,
do?
it
And then
applied in
decide,
another way.
listen, I never want anybody that works for me or with me to feel that way, and to learn from that. Same thing with experiences. So, you know, I think that having that cross exposure is so important, because it does help you kind of narrow down what makes you happy and what you're passionate
Because
about.
we're all looking at early on in our careers, and you have to learn what is my professional place and what's the right balance between having a great title or being satisfied from the work you do. And I don't want to leave this chapter without mentioning this one thing, because it did crystallize, you say, in one particular moment where all Disney employees are meant to, of course, every once in a while, that's what Disney is about, dress up as one of the Disney characters. Is it Mickey Mouse? Is it Donald Duck? And of course, you had to do that too every once in a while. And you realized at one of those times you were sitting there, what was it, a Donald Duck or so, you said, this is not who I am. This is not where I get my professional satisfaction from.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was a phenomenal experience. I think you will have these moments where you say, maybe this is the end of the road for this chapter, and you want to move on to something. As I think what Disney did for me, it really confirmed the fact that I wanted to work in the hotel field, that was my passion, as opposed to a broader areas of opportunities in entertainment or park services. And that's why I decided to move back to the States and really focus my career on being a hotelier.
Yeah, and you said that you met someone there. You're now back in DC, and you met someone there. You said that had a really big impact on you as a mentor. Somebody who showed with his class and elegance. I think his name was Hans Bruland, who worked in one of those boutique hotels where you ended up. And you said, you know, that was something that I really learned from this man, is to how to behave, how to present myself, how to treat clients. Really, the human aspect of the job.
Yeah, mentors are very, very important. I think you know, both professional and personal mentors. You know, I think you never stop learning. Look at the best sportsmen out there. You know, sportsmen and women out there. You know, Federer. I was reading about Federer. He had that surgery on his knee, and he's you know, he's already thinking about at what, almost 40 years old now, how he's going to come back next season and play differently. And he's working with obviously with a coach and a trainer. And I think as professionals, you know, you have to have mentors and coaches, formal and informal. And for me, you mentioned Hans Bruland. I got back to the US in '97 and worked with Hans, and he took me under his wing right away. And what I learned from him was just what elegance and class meant under not only when everything goes well, because when everything goes well, it's easy to be a prince, right? When the hotel makes money and the guests are happy and everything's going well.
How do you behave under stress? Are you still able to have that professional class, that smile, to put the client first?
Yeah, how are you resilient, right? And you can be tough and yet not lose your calm, your focus, you know, and really communicate in a way that is elegant and yet determined, you know. And that is an art, you know. It's an art, and it often leads to better outcomes, by the way.
Right.
And until then, you know, I was a passionate, you know, go-getter, and nothing scared me. But I had a tendency to get, you know, agitated if things didn't go my way, or if I was having an argument. And anyway, you know, you emulate the things that you see that you like in people, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think everybody around you has things that they do better than you do, and if you can, you know, somehow understand, learn, you know, emulate those things, you become a better person, a better leader, and a better professional.
Yeah, and so you were able to grow under his wings for a while, and then you hit another milestone that so many people that we've talked to have hit at some point in their career, which is that, you know, great, you have this fantastic mentor, but at some point that learning curve, of course, you know, tapers off, and then the question is, can I still grow, especially in a small place if it's a boutique hotel, and that is the main hotelier? Then of course you're there, and so. For you, that was sort of a moment where you said, okay, I've spent a couple of years here, I've learned a lot, and now I'm ready to take that next step, to go to that big hotel group. And that, in your case, was the Four Seasons.
That's right, in 2000. And I think the big change here was, again, going back to being Swiss, I was always taught that quality always wins. And so I was looking for a quality organization. I was looking for an organization. If I was going to go work with a company as opposed to an independent hotel or my own business, I wanted to be associated with a company that was going to be uncompromising when it comes to quality and excellence. And that was, to me, Four Seasons was a great example of this. I also wanted a company that has a strong company culture, that I had, their values would match my personal values, values about ethics and integrity and the golden rule. And so I found a home. I never thought I'd spend 20 years. It's going to be 20 years on August 1st. And I started as hotel manager in Washington, D.C., which is the number 2 job. And 20 years later, I'm president of the company. I never intended it to be that way, but no. I think it's a combination of hard work, timing, and frankly, great support from the people around me. So it was a great decision. Probably after marrying my wife, probably the second best decision I made, at least professionally. And I love this company. I've been very fortunate.
And of course, you've had the luck, the good fortune of then, of course, having been able to work with the founder, the legendary founder of Four Seasons, Isidore Sharp. You say he's the last legend with the necessary sense of drama, the last legend in the hotel business. And he was still the CEO when you started, so you're able to learn from him too. Now, people are asking too on our chat, and that's actually a chapter that comes next in your career. You were in DC, you were transferred then to the Mexico office, I think, or actually to start almost the Mexico outlet, start a resort. And one of the great things that you were able to do there, you told me, was to work, let's say, on a sustainability package, not to say, you know what, we're a hotel, yes, we are there for high-end clients, travelers, yes, but we also have a part to play in the local community, and we have also a responsibility to take in making sure that we are sustainable. How did that work when you were there?
Look, CSR, ESG today has become a fundamental part of any company. But I think for me it was very, very personal. It was about making sure that as we developed this high-end resort on the west coast of Mexico in Punta Mita, which is about 45 minutes north of Puerto Vallarta, about 60 kilometers. That we did it in a way that was respectful of the environment, that we integrated the resort into the natural beauty and landscape of the place, that we protected, the natural environment, but also that we were a good citizen and that we would provide great jobs to these employees that were joining the hotel and the brand. And so we took some very concrete steps. For example, when we got there, the hotels only hired staff seasonally. So they would hire everybody at the beginning of the season, which there is October, and let everybody go in March or April. We made the choice early on to give full-time jobs to everybody. And that was a huge, and we did it for 2 reasons. One, if we felt it was important to retain, it was an important competitive advantage to attract and retain the best talent locally. And the second reason is because we felt it was the right thing to do. And so after that, it really was like it started a movement where every hotel had to adjust and start hiring people full time, which means that when people get hired full time, they can get credit, they can buy a house, they can buy a car. It's a whole new, dimension of their personal success.
Right.
And so this is a small example, but we took decisions like that along the way that really established us as the best employer in the area.
And that pays off, of course, in the long run, because
Always.
you're going to be known as a good employer. You're going to be known also with the clients, with the customers. After a while, they also start to demand that you do well on ESG. You call it environmental, social, and governance metrics. And of course, we see that now, don't we? And then you have that competitive advantage too. It's a question that was actually asked by Vita McKenzie, and she also asked that going forward, because of course it remains a challenge. And if we look at now, we say, the negative aspects of the COVID crisis we all know, some people are saying, you know what, if there's one silver lining of COVID, it's the fact that the environment actually got a breathing space. And of course, that means, CO2 reductions because of less travel, less transport, all things that are not convenient, they're not fun for us, certainly not good for the hotel and the tourism industry, but that did give the planet a break. What's your view on that, and how are you able to say, I am proud of the values that we have as a company, and yet I'm responsible as a company in terms of sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a huge opportunity for the travel industry at large to make great strides into sustainable travel. I mean, I was reading an article in the New York Times yesterday, I believe, on Venice, and how Venice is trying to use this opportunity to reinvent themselves because they realize that the current model is just not sustainable, and so I think like every crisis, this brings about, will continue to bring about opportunities to go beyond what we already do, which is focus on environmental impact, carbon footprint, corporate social responsibility that we just talked about, but really think through carefully what the impact of tourism is, both how we enhance the positive of travel, because again, there's so much
Right.
that's great about travel.
But
it brings the world together, and it ensures that it's an incredible source of employment for globally. So I think there's so many positives, but balancing that with what you just brought up is critical.
Yeah, and not easy, of course. And somebody, of course, as you say, you're a person of values, you're a company of values, and of course, you're looking at these two impacts that are pointing a little bit, it seems, in reverse directions, right? Because you can't have it both ways, or can you? I mean, what's the way forward? How do you do that? How do you have a company that's devoted to travel and receiving people that travel, and yet help reduce things like CO2 emissions?
Again, I think it's committing to ensuring that you maximize, the science and technology to ensure that everything you do, from the way you build, like, the biggest impact on the environment from a hotel, any building, is actually the MEP, and how you build the efficiencies around energy.
The energy efficiency of the building itself. That's the huge factor.
All the way down to the materials that you use to build the hotel.
Yeah,
right?
And of course, there's innovations, and you focus on that.
Tremendous innovation, tremendous. And we work with the best experts in the world to ensure that the new buildings are not only great aesthetically and visually pleasing and amazing design, but that fundamentally, right, they use the latest and greatest technology to ensure that we are respectful of the environment and the impact we have.
Yep.
And so that's where we spend a lot of time. And then there's all these other dimensions we've talked about, including, frankly, the impact you have on the local communities. I mean, some of our hotels are very, very remote. In a way, in an urban environment, it's a lot simpler because there is the rule book is created. But when you open in places like Bora Bora, the Maldives, the Seychelles, right, where in some cases you're the larger employer on the island, or you might be the only
major,
tremendous
opportunity for impact,
complexity to a different level
there. And of course, you get the structural impact, but you also have the human impact. You talked about it, and that's something that you learn in the last phase of your career, which is really, how do I lead, let's say, with emotional intelligence? How do I lead people? How do I do HR right? What are some of the key learnings that you have from those last, let's say, 10 years in which you focused your career more on that human element of leadership?
Yes, so we've done a lot of studies. There's actually a Harvard Business Review piece that came out that you can find online on emotional intelligence and the importance of emotional intelligence in leadership and especially in the hospitality industry. And, notions such as authenticity, if you think about, leaders who show authenticity in their leadership style have a very, very impactful, very powerful following.
What does that mean in practice? So you're now, of course, one of those people who does that, who communicates to its people.
Yeah.
What do you say? You just had a major crisis. You have to send out emails. You have to do a video conference with your employees. What do you tell them?
Well, that's a great example. I think it starts with being honest and being transparent and admitting when you don't know something, or admitting when there's a lack of clarity. In this situation, for example, hope, and not optimism, but hope is really what you're trying to instill. Because if you start saying that everything is great, don't worry, it's going to be fine. People know everything is not great right now. People realize that things are hard. People realize there's so much uncertainty. So I think to be very honest about those things that we know, the things that we don't know, and what we're doing about it, creates trust. Back to the trust factor, right? And in our business, we're a people business, right? When you go to our hotels, what you will remember is not the interior design and the room and the bed. It will be the people you interacted with that provided this great sense of, the service that's intuitive. So, for us, we want our employees to feel empowered. We want them to feel confident going out there. And in order for them to be really motivated, they need to feel a strong connection with their leadership. With the leadership of the company. And, I think the best way to achieve that is to have a clear vision, to be coherent in your, in your strategies with your vision, with your global vision for your brand. And then to equip your team with the right tools so they can do their job, to empower them, and to make sure that they feel empowered and trusted. And
right.
So for me, the big, advice I could give here is to future leaders is, I think authenticity, vulnerability to some extent, right? When you make a mistake, admitting the fact that you made a mistake. You're not perfect. Everybody knows you're not perfect. If you try to keep this appearance that you're perfect at all times, you're going to lose credibility. And so that's what being authentic means, being vulnerable to some extent. And that goes back to the emotional intelligence piece. People today don't want to be just
a number.
Yeah, they don't want to be managed. They want to be inspired.
They want to be inspired. And it's
People
one of the things
don't want to be managed. They want to be inspired.
You said, one of the ways that we stand out as a company, the way we receive our clients and our customers, is when you ask us a question, we won't have that prepared answer that you often get the feeling you get in many other places. No, we will listen to what you say, we will take it in, and then we will answer. That's the authenticity that you show when it comes to customers.
Yeah, that's how it comes together in the service delivery. Yeah.
In a service delivery. Christian, I want to give a chance also to a couple of students to ask questions, of course, and perhaps a good one to bring in first is Mia. Mia, who's from Turkmenistan, but who's currently in Frankfurt in Germany. And Mia, I think you had a question about what we were talking about. What are those success elements in the industry, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much for the great speech, Mr. Clerc. So my question is, in your opinion, what are the fundamental elements in luxury hotel industry? Like
Hi,
you were
Mia.
talking about it in the beginning. Yeah.
Thank you for your question. Look, I think the fundamental element in the luxury hospitality industry, as much as any luxury business, is excellence. I think in everything that you do, and in our business in the hospitality space, experiences have become the new currency of luxury, more than the design, the lavish, architecture and suites, the quality of the linen. All of that is important, but that's table stakes in our business for travelers who look for extraordinary experiences. So, for us, experiences means that wherever you go in our company, and by the way, all of our hotels are built and designed differently. So it's always a surprise when you get there. We have everything from, 15th century convents to, an IMP urban tower in New York. I mean, we did a full gamut, right? So the idea here is that when you come to our hotels, we want you to really get a sense of place. We want you to understand where you are. We want you to get a full exposure to the local culture and environment. And then we want to provide unique experiences through all the key services, amenities that are exceptional. So for example, our restaurants are designed not as hotel restaurants, but as independent restaurants that are intended to complement your experience. Food and beverage, food drives a large amount of the luxury hotel business today. People travel for food. It's one of the top criteria for travel. And so we spend a lot of time identifying what kinds of food offerings, restaurant offerings we can provide in our hotels to complement the hotel experience and to frankly welcome not only hotel guests, but also local patrons. So we also design restaurants with the local population in mind, right? We want the locals to come into our hotels to experience our bars and restaurants. So I think it's all about experiences, but always with the focus of excellence.
Yeah, and it's
at the core.
And so that's what you do. And for those of us who've been fortunate enough to be able to experience one of those stays at the Four Seasons, or at least one of those restaurants, as for example, the iconic one in New York, we do associate Four Seasons with that, with an excellent experience. And you can't dissociate the physical experience, of course, from the brand. So one of the questions that we get online from Katina is, and she's from Thailand, and she says, what she's been surprised by is sort of the innovative and adaptive approach that you've taken to COVID by offering, for example, at-home products and private home experience. She mentioned something that was called Four Seasons Jet, for example. Could you tell us a little bit about that reaction and how you've tried to get that excellent experience throughout the crisis?
Yeah, I mean, a number of ways, but for sure. So the private jet is something that we've had for the past few years, and it is basically a private 48-seat jet that's all been designed by Four Seasons and takes you around the world to different parts of the world to experience a local culture. And we create them around various themes. And of course, in the current environment, there's great interest for this. Although, right now, obviously with the current situation, we've taken a temporary pause on this. But the next trip is planned for early 2021. I will say that, for example, our private villa product is in incredible demand right now. Everything that provides you with or guests with the privacy, and a villa is perfect in the current environment, is in great demand. And so, we are really focused on ensuring that all of our private villa product is, accessible and available, because there's been tremendous demand. We also have a retail platform where we offer Four Seasons branded products so that you can create a Four Seasons experience at home if you want, from your bed to your pillows to, your bathrobes. So look, for us, I think what's important here is you define what your relationship with our brand is. Not it. Our guests are not only the people that are staying in our hotels in a suite with us. If we have people that come to our hotels just to have a cup of tea in the lobby, or to have a glass of champagne at the bar, or people who just like our pillows and order our pillows at home.
Right.
For us, we want you to define what the relationship is with the brands. Digital technology today allows us to stay in touch with our guests and our clients, around the world. And Four Seasons is a gateway to a global experience. And I think that the consistency of providing an experience that will be authentic, and the excellence with which we execute, I think, is really the
the key to future success.
Is the key. Yeah, it's been the key to building our brand and the key to the future.
It's something, a topic though that everyone's wondering about. I mean, like, I see it on the chat here. People are asking these questions. Like, how do you foresee to recover? I mean, like, any business has to answer that question. We've got one question, I think, from Ezra Bakir from she's based in Spain, which of course is one of those countries that have been early on heavily hit. And she has a question, I think, in that regard about the preparedness of the company. Go ahead, Ezra.
Hello. First of all, thanks for your time, Mr. Clerc. And that's so much exciting for me to ask my question. And as Peter just said, I'm from Turkey, and currently I live in Spain. And I'm doing MBA at EU Barcelona campus with the majority in international business. What I would like to ask you, in your opinion, how prepared was Four Seasons hotels and resorts and the hospitality industry in general for the pandemic crisis? And what advice would you give future hospitality leaders regarding this unpredictable global challenge? And what are your key learnings? Thank you.
Thank you, Ezra. Appreciate the question. Look, we were, first of all, I don't think anybody could have predicted that that this crisis would happen. I think people thought that after a 10-year run in the economy, we would have some kind of economic downturn. I don't think anybody predicted it will be a pandemic. We had an advantage at Four Seasons. It's that we saw, as I mentioned earlier, we have 9 hotels in China, and we early on realized that this had the potential to become a global pandemic. We right away worked with some of the foremost experts in epidemiology to understand what the risk was associated with this becoming global pandemic. And so, although we were acting locally in China, we were making global plans to respond. And so I think we had a step ahead, but it was still very much reacting to what was happening in China. And we've put together what I think is a very thorough plan to reopen our hotel and provide guidance to our hotels to operate in a safe manner, to the safest possible way. I think the big learnings here are, and I think one of the areas that helped us, I think that what's required right now is in leadership in general and in every organization is, first of all, a great flexibility, adaptability. This is moving so fast and there's so much happening that it requires the agility to be able to continue to shift your approach, right? It's not, you set a strategy, but as you execute, things keep changing. The rules of the
your
game
original
change.
plan, even if you saw it coming early, that's a fluid situation. That's a question from another.
Because think about you don't even know. I mean, scientists don't even know everything they need to know about this thing, right? So as science and technology evolves, you have to adjust your game plan. So agility is huge. Resilience.
What does that look like, Christian? What does that look like in a place like, for example, your hotels that have reopened, that are back in business? What does agility look like?
So for us, it means that we have what we call Lead with Care global advisory board made of some of the foremost experts in the world on the medical field. And we are on a weekly basis reviewing our approach to our policies and procedures as it relates to how we operate, not only hygiene and safety, but also, frankly, the services that we provide. I mean, right now, for example, we don't have kids clubs operating. We don't have spas in most places operating. But at some point, we'll bring these services back. So, it's this constant assessment of what's our approach in terms of how we operate. And the agility piece comes in that you need to be willing to change your policies and procedures regularly, and the hotel need to be able to adjust quickly, right? So that's the agility piece. You need to be resilient. right? Because this is a marathon.
What does that mean financially? You know, you have to go to the bank and ask for a loan. You have to go to your investors and say, could you, would you mind if we, is that what that means? Resilient?
Yeah, I think you need to have a plan because, there's so much unknown. And so as you creating your forecast for the year, but also looking to 2021, you need to ask yourself, what does the path to recovery look like? And of course, it's hard to predict in the current environment, right? Nobody has a crystal ball. So you have to make assumptions based on market intelligence that is not reliable in many cases. So you work on number scenarios. So anyway, it's about making a mid-term plan, hoping for the best, but planning for the worst, and making sure that you're stress testing your assumptions, right?
Yeah.
And seeing where that takes you. What does that mean concretely? So that's the resilient bit. But also, frankly, the resilience is also with the teams to make sure that they don't lose the commitment, the passion.
That's right. Because of course, at some point it becomes a mental stress as well, a mental crisis. I want to, before we close though, I want to give the opportunity to Teodora Varasami. I hope I said that correct, Teodora. I'm sure you'll tell me I didn't. You're in one of those other countries, Greece, that is actually done really well with the coronavirus, but that typically relies a lot on tourism. So why don't you ask us your question?
Yes, I'm very happy that I'm here. Thank you, Christian, for this great conversation. Well, my question is, how has COVID-19 pandemic affected the tourism industry, especially in the southern member states, where tourism is a major source of income, like Greece? What are your plans to refloat?
Yeah, thank you, Taylor. I mean, the impact has been devastating, and any economy that relies on tourism, as you know, has been hurt by this.
Christian, if you put that in numbers, so for us to understand, what does that mean? Does that mean minus 50? Does it mean minus 70? Does it mean minus 90? Like, if you look at those typical tourists, take Greece. What typical Mediterranean country tourism industry? Minus 90, 80 over a couple of months, and now
I don't have the numbers for Greece, but I will tell you. I mean, our hotel in Greece was closed and reopened. We are at Astir Palace in Athens, a beautiful hotel there. We've reopened, and we're going to be opening for the season. But demand is starting to come back, primarily regional European demand. As you know, the European community has restrictions on who can come in, and that has had an impact on all the hotels. But think about it. I mean, for the better part of the past 3 to 4 months,
things were closed. Simple.
Things were closed.
That means minus 100% over those 3 months. Not hard.
So then you take that, and then you take an assumption of a ramp up that takes you between now and the end of the year to call it 50% of the business you had last year, right? Between now and the end of the year. That's devastating, right? And so, I mean, that's an order of magnitude for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Christian, I have to say, if I look at the Q&A, it lights up like a Christmas tree. So many questions for you today. We are ending, nearing the end of our conversation. So perhaps just to close, you said, don't be optimistic, but be hopeful. Yes. What's your message of hope that you could bring perhaps to these students, and perhaps also for themselves, because they're of course starting to start their careers. How should they go about these next couple of months and years?
Look, first of all, my message of hope is this. This is hard. It's unprecedented, but we will get through this. Okay. And the world economy will be back on its feet. And regardless, what sector of the economy you're looking to join, this also, as every crisis, creates incredible opportunities. And so, to me, the best place to be right now in this time is in school, is learning. So I think your timing is fantastic. And for those of you who are looking for an internship or looking for a first job, I know it's hard, but the fact that you are still in school or still learning or continuous learning, I think it's phenomenal. And this any crisis acts as an accelerator to technology, to trends. And if you can figure out what will have to change, right? Because things have to change. What will have to change through this? I think that you could turn this into an incredible opportunity for you. Yeah. So my message is, we will get through this. Things will start recovering, and we will go back to the new norm. But don't waste. What I would say is, don't waste a good crisis. Try to use this time to really challenge yourself to think about how, what will change, what are the opportunities, and how can you play a role in this?
And what will be on the other side? It's a great message that we can give our students. And Christian, I want to thank you already, Mr. Clerc, for the time that you spent with us. And by the way, maybe it won't change 100% of your business, but one student said, you know what, if we can help back by booking a room at the hotel, as long as you give us a special deal, they said, we'll figure out whether that's possible or not. But we ran out of time.
Send me a note.
It is a note. Thank you for your time, Christian, Mr. Clerc, and we hope, of course, to see you soon in Montreux or in Washington in happier times. But thank you so much for your time and inspiration. And now back over to Luc.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerc. Another great series, another great learning for our students. We understand that you're a really busy man, but you took the time to talk to our students, so much appreciated. I hope to meet you next year at the Montreux Jazz Festival. If not before, you are always welcome to one of our campuses if you're around Europe. Next for us is next week. Last series of our learning from leaders for this season before our summer break. We will be welcoming Thierry Geerts, the country manager of Google Belgium and the Netherlands. Another great session. Thank you very much for joining us, and stay safe, everybody. Bye-bye.